My son was married to Jenna, and they had my grandchildren, Ella, now 19, and Kai, now 18, and Luca, now 15. 10 years ago, we lost my son to a workplace accident. Jenna remarried 3 years later and became a stepmom to a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old. She later had 3 more children with her husband. My family and I stayed very close to our grandchildren, and we were still in Jenna's life, but there was never much of a closeness there between Jenna and us. There have been bumps along the way, included but not limited to issues when the kids wanted to spend time with us instead of her in-laws, and when her stepdaughters became upset about having less grandparents and wanting to be adopted by us. More recently, Jenna was upset to learn our son had left money for the kids that was guarded by my husband and I. She learned this when Ella reached 18, and my husband and I discussed how she wanted to access the money. He left money with Jenna also, but he wanted something that would be protected by someone else if he were to die. Jenna felt like it was unfair that Ella, Kai, and Luca would have such a big start in life between our son's money and money my husband and I added to the account. This is what leads us into this next problem. Ella's youngest stepdaughter was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago. Treatments have cost them a lot, and they want to go to another country with her for a different kind of treatment for her cancer, one that has shown great promise. The problem is affording all of this. Jenna wanted my husband and I to fund this, either by taking money from my grandchildren's accounts to give for the treatment, or by paying with other money. She said we clearly have access to more money than they do, and it's the right thing to do. To hell with biology, because if we can pay for our grandkids to go to college and beyond, we should be willing to pay for a surrogate grandchild's life-saving cancer treatments. I told Jenna she would not get any money from me and would need to find another way to pay for the treatment. Ella and Kai already warned me that she had tried to get them to convince me. Luca is also having trouble with it, but he said he's doing fine. Jenna is frustrated and angry, and she told me I was cruel and soulless. I felt bad for her because I can see she is at a breaking point, and it appears that the marriage is having trouble because her husband is also aware of the money and feels like it should be used for his daughter instead of college for my grandkids. So, am I sympathetic to them? As a mother who lost her child, I know it's agonizing, but I also want to look after my grandkids and honor my son's wishes. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Surrogate grandchild. What the duck? Her new family has nothing to do with you or your late son. It is awful that their child has cancer, but that is their problem. It is their new family, and she has her own family, as does he. Why can't they pay for it? To try to go after the money for the future of the children of your late son is just disgusting, especially since one is just 15. Not the a-hole. They should respect that decision immediately and not feel entitled to it. Your son's money is for your grandkids. If anything, they should be grateful that the financial burden of your son's kids has been at least partially taken care of, which will allow them to focus on their sickly child. Not the a-hole. Yes, your son left money for his children, and you are right in preserving that for them to have when the time comes. However, you don't appear to be very sympathetic to the situation. A mother is concerned about her child and is looking for help. You are linked to your daughter-in-law no matter what, and as much as it was a tragedy what happened to your son, would you really want her to go through losing a child? It may be the way that you have written. However, you can support the mother of your grandchild in a number of different ways, not just financially, through what must be an extremely difficult, upsetting, and stressful time. My 24 female. Parents got divorced back when I was 11 years old and shared custody of both myself and my younger brother, 20 male. A few months after the split, my dad introduced my brother and I to my now stepmom, who we'll call Mary. My dad never gave Mary any kinds of boundaries when it came to dealing with my brother and I. So growing up, she'd often cross the line, and my dad wouldn't do anything to stand up for my brother and I, and always sided with Mary. Fast forward years later, my dad and I now have a pretty good relationship, and I've forgiven him. I've forgiven Mary, but don't have a close relationship with her. We're cordial with each other, but not close by any means. I've never gotten an actual apology from either of them. I've just chosen to forgive and let it go, but never forget. My dad and Mary had their wedding in early 2020, right before virus. I was not involved at all in the wedding. I wasn't in the wedding party, and my boyfriend and I were set at a table with 4 other people in total, including us. It was essentially like the leftover table in my opinion. My younger brother was in the wedding party, as a groomsman, so he sat at the head table. The whole situation just made me feel pretty crappy that I wasn't really involved in the wedding at all, besides for a few pictures. So now boyfriend, or fiancé now, and I have been engaged for a year, and the wedding is next month. My dad is going to be walking me down the aisle. I sat my mom, dad, brother, and both my parents in the front row for the ceremony. Mary sat on the row behind them. My dad asked me why Mary sat in the row behind him and why she can't sit with him. I told him that the front row was for my immediate family only, and that's how I want it. Apparently, she is unhappy and uncomfortable with this, and feels that she should be more involved in the wedding. I told my dad, okay, sucks for her. I was unhappy and uncomfortable at her and my dad's wedding, and I sucked it up for a day. My dad's financially pitching in to help for the wedding, and Mary has threatened to take away the financial help from my dad and her. I told her to do whatever she wants, and that I frankly don't really care. She's been bad-mouthing me to both my dad and my brother, saying how I'm a major a-hole for doing this, and after all she's done for me. My brother thinks I'm in the right, and it's my day. My dad is, of course, siding with Mary, and understands that it's my day, but feels like I should be considerate of her and her feelings. Am I the a-hole for not sitting her with my dad and involving her more? Info. If I was to sit Mary beside my dad, I'd have to move either one of my grandparents, my mom, or my brother to the second row. There's not room for all of them. Not the a-hole, but it is weird that you're seating her apart from her husband. I don't blame you for wanting to cut her and your dad out of the ceremony the way they did you, but it's strange that you're allowing him to walk you down the aisle. If I were in your position, I would be tempted to have my brother walk me. Dad and his new wife can sit together in the second row. As for the financial assistance, just drop it. Your parents are going to hold financial assistance over your head forever if you allow yourself to remain dependent on it. The solution to this is simple. Your dad, after walking you down the aisle, sits with Mary in the second row. Everyone is happy. Your dad doesn't feel you slighted his wife. You get to make the point that she is an immediate family, and you can ride off into the sunset as content as possible. You're not the a-hole for wanting to sit her in the second row. Not the a-hole. You should ask your father, since it is just 2 years ago, to seriously answer your question. Why was it okay for Mary to not involve you as family in her wedding, but not okay for you to do the same? Why should you be considerate of her feelings when he didn't ask Mary to be considerate of yours? Just sit quietly and wait for him to answer. Don't get distracted. Don't let him change the subject. Ask him to please explain his thinking here. You, of course, aren't going to get an answer, but be patient. Tell him if he can give you a reasonable explanation as to why he thinks differently about your wedding than he did about his own. You can solve this problem. Then, enjoy watching him squirm and bluster and sidetrack the conversation. End the convo when you get bored, and put Mary at the kids' table. Oh, and to be sure, Mary is going to duck with you on your wedding day, so have a plan for that. Yesterday, I received an email from an address that I've never had correspondence with. It was my former therapist, supposedly, and she confessed to having feelings for me and not stopping our therapy sessions soon enough. At the end of the email was a note from her husband, maybe soon-to-be ex-husband, not sure their marital status, that said that I should email him if she had an affair with me, or if I saw anything to suggest she was having an affair with someone else. The fact that he added that at the end of the email gave me the vibes that he was looking for dirt on her. Even if the confession were true, I think it is very unprofessional to send it to people where you are unsure of their ability to handle such news. I'm also worried that if her husband has access to this email account, that he could potentially have access to her session notes. Bottom line is, I don't know if she approved of the email being sent, or if the husband sent it pretending to be my former therapist. I don't even know how best to report this violation. The state licensing board shows her license is still active, but in the email, it states that she was not working as a therapist any longer. I contacted the practice that she was working for when I was her client and left a message. I just don't know what else to do. The whole thing has me very shaken. I was her client while living in Utah. I'm thinking the therapist may be a victim here too. I reckon her jealous hubby stole her account details, found the contact lists, and is sending spam to everyone on it. Sure, she might have just been negligent, but do not stop at that thought. Hacking is a thing. Dodgy partners putting tracking software on phones, that sort of thing. I would be alerting the former practice to the possibility that several of her clients may have been compromised by a hacker. She stopped seeing any male clients abruptly? It sounds like her husband is a hell of a piece of work. I'm glad she's escaping. She should be carrying insurance for this sort of breach of her obligations to secure your records. But I don't know how that works here if there aren't financial damages or very extreme emotional duress. The practice reporting it and encouraging you to report it is the right thing. Hopefully the practice figures out how to make sure therapists can't take client info with them. Assuming that the practice is subject to HIPAA, and unless it's cash only, it is, then this was a breach of your protected health information under HIPAA. The husband should not be aware that you were a patient. You can wait until the practice gets back to you, or you can report this breach to HHS via the online HIPAA reporting tool. But you probably won't learn anything until the practice gets back to you. Update. My ex was also emailed. We saw the therapist together a couple times, and she also called the therapist practice and talked to someone. My former therapist left the practice 5 months ago. She's no longer practicing as a therapist, but rather a life coach. Her license is still active though. The practice is reporting to the state licensing board. The practice got in touch with the former therapist, and she provided names and emails of everyone who received an email. The practice sent an email to everyone who received an email and apologized and let us know that she had no access to their system once she left the practice. They do not know why she had email addresses of former clients still. They said that it was a HIPAA violation and gave the link where we could file a complaint with the licensing board. It seems like it was the ex-husband who did it. Apparently, there is a very nasty divorce happening. My thoughts on the whole ordeal. I'm angry that my privacy and trust was broken due to her carelessness. However, it does appear that she wasn't involved in sending the email, so she could be a victim too. I'm doubly angry at whichever of them sent the emails. They have no idea the emotional state of the recipients, or if they could handle such a shocking confession, even if it was true. It was very difficult 2 years ago when she informed me suddenly that she would no longer be able to see me as a client because she was stopping seeing any male clients. I had just divorced, was living on my own, and it was the early days of the virus, so I was entirely alone. Being involved in all this has brought up some of those difficult feelings. I have a supportive wife and I'll make it through, but what a wild trip the last day has been. I, 24 male, purchased a new vehicle late last year. Well, new to me. It's a 2021 model year with 20,000 miles on it. Over the past couple of years, I've managed to become completely debt-free, started a savings account, and boosted my credit score considerably. I considered my purchase to be a reward for myself for being financially responsible, as well as a replacement for my older, less than reliable vehicle. I purposely chose not to tell my father, who lives in another state, about my purchase because he is the most hypocritical being on the planet. I love him, but he can turn any subject into a 30-minute lecture on what I could have done better. Given Dad's nature, I asked each member of my family that regularly speaks to him to not mention the vehicle. I accepted that he would find out eventually, but I was not in a hurry for that day to arrive. I asked my brother, 21 male in particular, not to say anything, because he knows just as well as I do how Dad would react. Not even a day after, I received a phone call from my dad. He asked me how I could be so irresponsible and couldn't believe I'd get rid of my old car for no good reason. He proceeded to criticize everything about my purchase, from the make, model, to the trim level, and even the color. He thinks black was a poor choice because it's harder to keep clean. After a thorough tongue lashing, I point blank asked him how he found out. He simply said, "Your brother texted me a picture of it." This next part is where I might be the a-hole. I asked my dad, "Hey, do you remember how you said brother's name isn't allowed to have pets in his house since he's renting from you? Well, he's adopted several cats and dogs since you moved out of state." My dad promptly ended the conversation, and within an hour I had text messages from my mom, sister, and my brother, all asking why the duck I told Dad that, since he was now giving my brother the ultimatum of either finding new homes for all of his animals or being evicted from his house. Not the a-hole. Your brother told your dad something you had asked him not to. He clearly sees that as a line that can be crossed. He should have thought about the fact he was breaking a rental agreement. Also, even if it wasn't a tit for tat, it's not unreasonable to tell the owner of a property that it's being used in a way they hadn't permitted. Several cats and dogs is something I would want to know about, as it can at least have some cosmetic impact on the property. You're not the a-hole for keeping information from your father, and your brother should have known better than to stir the pot when he's up to his neck in paternal rule violations of his own. But it's a real shame that your actions might result in multiple animals losing their homes. They're not responsible for any of this dysfunction. But the real issue is that your father is an insufferable authoritarian. No one wants to stand up to him, so you all just stand by and let him push around others. Everyone sucks here. Not the a-hole. He felt it was okay to go against your wishes in regards to informing your father, and so did you. Besides, it was his choice to go against his lease agreement and have pets. And whereas your brother was actually breaking rules, what you did with your vehicle is none of your father's business. What your brother does on his property is. We started dating 15 years ago and got married 4 years later. It was a happy period for the most part. We have a 14-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. 18 months ago, I was worried that my then wife was cheating on me with one of her coworkers, who looked barely older than 20. Her flirting was noticeable to me, and I called her out. She insisted no harm was done. Still, my daughter said she saw him and her come into the house when I was away at one time, and she told me she was offered money not to say anything. She took the money, but told me anyway. Not wanting to get her into trouble, I investigated further. Ultimately, this ended with her divorcing me and accusing me of being paranoid, and she moved in with her affair partner. We agreed that I would have primary custody and she would have visitation rights. Still, my kids refused to see her. Yesterday, she called me and admitted she made a mistake getting with him and wanted to know if she can reconcile with me. I told her I would think about it, but she seemed insistent. What should I do in regards to my relationship? So, you caught her cheating and her response was to gaslight you and try to accuse you of being paranoid, despite the fact that she moved in with the affair partner after you separated. Wild. They always come back. You deserve better than that. She left you to be with a younger partner, and after he dumped her, she went back to you. Not to mention, she had the audacity to take him to your home and made your own daughter see him. Don't take her back. You already got lucky enough it was a divorce where you get the kids' custody. By the way, imagine how much it will hurt your children to have to live with their cheating mom once again. Don't do that, man. You were lucky enough to have the guard of your children. Stick with that. OP, you deserve so much better. Keep that door closed, and when you're ready, try to find a partner who is honest, kind, and, well, the opposite of how your wife treated you and your family. I can't believe she bribed your daughter to not tell you. No words.